This season, turn it up to 10. Sorta like a bad habit, we gon' do it again. Ready or not, we're gonna tie up some ends. Go tell a 36, try to grab all the friends. We're back like we never left. On track like a treble clef. Skip a beat on the 7th rest. Bring feast, we don't pass them over. We got the first fruits, no way to shoulders. Can't live on that bread alone. Every word of God's mouth will fuel me on. That's scripture, that's Christ alone. That's grace alone, that's faith alone. All glory to God, cause that's his alone. Since the lamb's been slain, we can each belong. The Lord is my strength, my peace, and my song. And I'll lay it all down at the feet of his throne. This yoke is easy. Burns light, even with a loud mouth trying to eat at the mic. Even if we down south, the humidity spike. Veils torn in two, so we gon' be alright. It's all grace till the Hoff goes off. Heretics better run till the top blows off. Got them all stood still like a jaw full of Botox. Time to break them down like a jaw on a blow pop. Don't stop, they're in need of it though. Through grace by faith, they could easily grow. New wave, new age, new way to see bro. Now one truth, life, one way to his throne. Like the cataract, Google it, we ain't dropping any rhetoric. Well, maybe so, but that's for you to find out. Don't get tossed to and fro by any loudmouth. What you think it's Indiana Jones, son? It's the year of the feast, we gon' grow some. Time to put some meat in the bones. Gotta put the milk down, son, it's time to leave home. I'm just saying there's a time in the season you gotta be a Berean. If you just hear and believe it, you could be walking with demons. It could be rendering season. All the things that go to God, that's a little like treason. Wait, welcome back, my friends. Did you ever really think we could pass the 10? Our stock's up, we about to trend. Cause the whole 36 wanna rap again. Wait, sounds too good to be true. Like rabbinic candy land, ain't no ladders, just shoot. We hold true if it's loaded in the cannon. Best believe it's understanding. If it's not, it ain't proof. Like sacred name of the 2-house frame. It start to tickle, then you fill it in the blanks. You better not, you be better off. Not trying to hassle Hoff, you can take it to the bank. This night ready, he's about to go off. Put the ring on your finger from the Cracker Jack box. It's hide and seek, let's see if you can find out all the little messages you hit before the timeout. Ever seen a scholar with a blue belt? I have, he's about to make your food melt. The loud one and he strikes again, but don't let him close range, he gon' bite your friends. So relax, got it still in control. He knows every care, every fit that you hold. He knows every hair, every need for your soul. Nothing new around here, this story's been told. I bet you feel weak and your life is in tatters. With bruised feet, your body is battered. You can't reach, trying to climb up that ladder. Sit back and hold fast till Messiah matters.
These guys are ready.
Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. This is Messiah Matters number 508. It's been so long, I don't know if I remember how to do this. My name is Caleb Haig.
Countdown to Passover. This is.
Woot woot.
This is the Hoff goes off.
Yes.
Not.
What up, my guy? Feels like it's been a long time.
I miss you, man. It's been 21 days since we...
21 days.
I have a counter that says days since the last Messiah Matters. It's like, now it goes to 0 today, though. It goes back to 0, so I'm happy.
It's been X amount of days since a Messiah Matters show. Nice. No, we should have something right behind me, like right here.
Totally.
There has been this many days without incident, without death.
Without OSHA, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Well, I've missed you, man. I've missed you. I'm happy to be back. Now, we have our producers coming up on the bottom of our screen right now. And
thank you all, producers.
Yes, we're going to have a new producer credit here shortly, but it's probably going to be a couple weeks. I know we're slacking here.
These are the best producers in the world.
That's true.
That's my opinion.
if
That's just
I were
one man's opinion.
if I were an executive producer of this show, I would have an IMDb. I'd have an IMDb with my face and all of the shows that I have produced.
Who's going to be the first?
Why wouldn't you? Right? I mean, come on. You could be the
And
executive
you could
producer.
have the episodes that you could have like
Exactly. I want to see it. Who's the first executive producer
Who's
to
up
put their
for it?
IMDb up? Anyway, okay. We're being silly. That's okay. I want to welcome everybody in the chat room. It's a small showing today, and that's okay. It's because people don't realize that we're back. And you know what? Who needs them? We got you guys. I want to show you guys something. All right, check this out. I went last weekend to. I'm gonna give a rundown of this. Went last weekend to the Central Washington Messianic Conference. It was fantastic. I gave 2 lectures on Saturday night. I spoke. The name of my lectures were "Sanctification and the Pronomian Reformation." Was what I spoke on. And basically what I did was I talked about, are we in a Reformation? And then what I did was essentially say, well, it doesn't matter if we're in a Reformation or not. What we're supposed to be doing is living unto God, and therefore sanctification, individual sanctification is what we should be worried about, not whether or not we're in a Reformation or not. And then I went through and I preached through Titus 2 and 3.
Nice.
Which was, I felt really good about it. There were some other speakers there that people probably know. Brent Emery, which is he's not a huge voice online, but he has a congregation here in Tacoma, Washington. He spoke, he gave 2 lectures. The title of his lectures were The Bible's Full of Itself. And he showed how certain concepts run through the Bible and how the Bible references itself in different places, which was very good. David Wilbur, who I'm sure many people know, man, it was such a blessing to meet David face to face. He flew in from South Carolina, and he spoke on Matthew 5. 2 lectures, one on Matthew 5:17, and then one on Matthew 5:30. I'm going to get this wrong. Is it 38 through 41, something like that? Anyway, very good as well. In fact, my son, my 12-year-old, he said probably 5 or 6 times, man, I really like David's lectures. And I said, who do you think, whose lectures were the best lectures? David. Thanks. Thank you very much for that.
There
So
you go.
David outshined Dad, which is great. Now, a lot of the time, when you go to when you speak at a conference like this, the conference will give the speakers a gift, and sometimes the conferences get pretty creative. For instance, Rob and myself and my father, we went and we spoke in Ontario, Canada one time. They gave us bobbleheads of ourselves. That was awesome. That was a cool one. The gifts that are given to us when we've gone to the Philippines have always been very cool as well. But they gave us a gift for this conference. And I got it here. Hang on. I got it right here. So, because we were speakers at this conference, they gave us a speaker. Okay, little speaker.
Yeah.
And on the top of it, it said, well, you can't read it from there because there's not enough light, but it's there you go. Thank you, Caleb, for speaking Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's word. So it's engraved on the top. That is a great gift. That's a cool one. I really
Now,
enjoy
is that a little Bluetooth thing that you can
it's for
music to?
exactly. Yeah. Very cool.
That is cute.
Yes. Very cool. And I got to say, outside of the lectures and meeting David Wilbur face to face, I talk to David all the time. Where I think we're good friends. He probably doesn't consider me a good friend, but who knows if he does or not. But I consider him to be a good friend of mine. So it was great to meet him finally face to face, be in the same room with him. Outside all that, I have to say, the Central Washington Messianic Conference, they are about swag. We got there, and their welcome packets, I mean, there was a pin with the conference. There was, notebooks, and there was mints, and there was, everything. It was, the swag was intense. It was great.
The mints were especially for you, Caleb. They're like, we got to give everybody mints, but we really need to make sure Caleb
Caleb needs some mints here. Anyway, So, okay, enough of the rundown of the conference. I hope to have my lectures from that conference up online for people to be able to watch within the next couple of weeks. And yeah, so the question in the chat room, are they available to watch / listen anywhere? The conference did record them. However, I'm going to be releasing my lectures on Torah Resource, possibly the Torah Resource YouTube channel. So go to the Torah Resource YouTube channel and subscribe there and make sure that you don't miss them. And then, of course, they will be in the library at Torah Resource as well. No matter what, they'll be in the library. And you might be able to catch them there first and foremost. So if you don't have a library membership, go to Torah Resource. Speaking of which, let's just go through this. Here you go. cheg@torahresource.com. That's how you can get a hold of us. That is my email address. So if you want to talk to me, send me an email. You can also call our comment line, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. You won't talk to us. Talk to an answer machine. Tell us how much you love us, hate us, disagree with us, agree with us. It doesn't matter. You can tell us whatever you want. MessiahMatters.com. Listen to past episodes. Get merch. And in a couple weeks, we'll have our executive producer credits back up there. And if you are on a reoccurring executive producer credit, don't worry. We're going to get you your swag here in a couple weeks. Fear not. And, of course, TorahResource.com. Go to Torah Resource, and from Torah Resource, you can go to the Learning Center, the TR Learning Center, and that is where you can get library memberships and everything like that. That's where my lectures will be first and foremost. And I actually have been doing some considering. I got some special stuff in store for library members, and we got some stuff that's going to be released here starting probably next month. Just slowly but surely, you're going to see stuff being released in the library that is going to be awesome. So, all right. And last but certainly not least, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I know it sounds weird, but it really does help us. Okay. Rob already said it. Passover is afoot, right? We are less than 12 days away from the Passover celebration. This is by far my favorite celebration. And at our house, at the Hegg house, we are at the Hegg Cardoza house. I should mention, but never mind. I shouldn't mention that. At the Hegg Cardoza house, we are getting the old crew back together. There was a crew of people that came from our church the very first year that our church had a celebration at our house. It was a very small group, but it's like this: the three core families from that getting back together, coming over to our house. We're pumped. I mean, pumped. Anyway, so talk to me, Rob. Now, we got a bunch of questions pertaining to calendar issues and whatnot about Passover. I'll tell you right now, let me just kick the hornet's nest right now. Yeshua was crucified on a Friday. He rose on a Sunday. Boom. There you go. That's all there is to it. There is no way to get around that. And I know everybody tries, but in the scriptures, you have 2 Shabbats in a row. You have a Shabbat for which is Friday, because they have the Last Supper.
It's the first day of unleavened bread. Yeah.
First day of unleavened bread. He is crucified on that day. And then the next day is a weekly Shabbat, because they wanted the bodies off the cross so that they weren't there over the Shabbat. So you can read my article on this. It's on TorahResource.com, I believe. My father's article on this is on TorahResource.com. And we can just let the tomatoes fly. Okay. Do you want to go into our notes, or do you have anything to say about Passover?
I'm excited. This year, this is going to be the first year in many where we're a guest at someone else's Seder.
Nice. Where are you going?
So I'm like, oh, this is great. Locally, it's going to be local. I mean, so we can just drive home afterwards. It's like,
Is your sister going too? Is your sister going to be there?
Oh, yeah. So this is going to be like, to enjoy someone else's hospitality is a different vibe than, now we're bringing stuff, right? So we're contributing, but it's different vibe than being the host. You know how that is.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a real blessing to enjoy somebody else's planning and preparation. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. We're hosting, but it's a small group, and everybody, and here's the thing. One of our guests already said, can we bring the meat? And we had decided on prime rib. We had already decided on prime rib for our dinner. And we said, no, it's going to be too expensive. We're going to get prime rib. They said, nope, we got it. It's like, all right. So I will buy some some good bottles of wine, and it'll be on. All right.
You got to get some horseradish.
Oh yeah.
Some sour cream.
Do you get, okay, now here's the question. Here is the question of the day about Passover. Do you get the shaved horseradish directly from the root, or do you get the mashed up stuff?
I can do the hardcore stuff, but I think the stuff that's mixed with some sour cream is, but I don't like all the additives that they put in some of those. So you got to watch. It's kind of spendy.
Yep.
But it's so good.
All right, let's get to it.
Clears out those
clears
sinuses.
out the nostrils. Yeah, exactly. All of the
That's what
allergies.
Passover's all about. Is clearing out the sinus. I'm kidding. No, of course not. I speak foolishly.
Okay, so I'll tell you this. Last night I sat down and I said, "Hey, Passover's coming up. We got to start watching some stuff." And I have little kids in the house, and I say, "Come on, let's watch some Superbook." So if you don't know what Superbook is, they redid Superbook. I used to watch Superbook when I was a little kid, but it was like really cheesy animation. Now it's all computer animation and whatnot. It's really well done. Anyway, so we watched the Exodus, and Moses parts the Red Sea, and my son, who's 5, goes, he's like, whoa, he's watching this thing. And I said, Levi, this is what we celebrate when we celebrate Passover. And he goes, this is what we celebrate. I mean, it was like his mind was, yes. He finally connected the dots. Okay, let's go to our show notes. I know that we've been talking for a little while, but that's okay. Lewis writes in, he says this, my question is that I understand that God's laws are eternal, but is it possible for some to be amended due to situations? Before we continue with Lewis's question, I tell you this is exactly what Dr. Walter Kaiser proposes in his built-in obsolescence. That is that there are laws that have that built into them, they become obsolete. So they run for a certain time and then they become obsolete. Hence the term built-in obsolescence. So Lewis is thinking theologically with some of the better Old Testament scholar minds of the world today. Let's keep going with Lewis's comment. Example of this can be the earthly temple and priestly services due to no temple. Hebrews 7:12 says, where there is a change of priesthood, there is a change in the law. Can that change be looked at as amended? Since the world to come, the Levitical system will be back up and running. I will give you my suggestion on this, then I'll pass it over to Rob. No, I don't believe that this is what's going on with the temple. In fact, I would say that the reason that there is no temple is the exact same, and Rob is the one who has hit this home. The reason that there's no temple is the same reason that there was no temple when Daniel was on earth. It's because Israel has rejected God. They've rejected Yeshua. They've rejected their God. They follow after the Baals. They follow after false gods. And God is punishing them. It's not that all of a sudden the temple service has been suspended and we don't have to do it right now. We're under a punishment. And Daniel was a believer. Daniel, fully wanted to serve God. He's in Babylon and he's still serving God. Was it Daniel's fault that he couldn't keep the temple service? No, it wasn't. But was he affected by Israel's sin? And the answer is absolutely. So I don't think that the temple has gone away and all of a sudden it's amended. We could talk about the Hebrews 7:12 passage. This passage in Hebrews 7:12, I don't even know if I have my Bible up. Oh, maybe I do. Good. This passage in Hebrews 7:12, let me get it up here so that we can read it. 7:12 says, for when there is a change in the priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. My father's done some excellent work on this in his Hebrews commentary, and I would recommend that to you. Ultimately, the point that he's making is that Yeshua is not of the line of Melchizedek, right? He's not a Melchizedekian, or he's not a Levitical priest. He's a Melchizedekian priest. Melchizedek, it's almost a midrash. He's playing off the fact that Melchizedek doesn't have any genealogy in the Torah, and that because of that, it's as if he's eternal, right? I mean, this is kind of the play that he's using. So then he says, well, Yeshua is after this same line. And what he's saying is that in the heavenly temple, there is a change in law. What's the change in law? The high priest that goes into the inner courtroom doesn't have to be the priest of Levi. He has to be of he's of a different lineage. And that is a change in the law. What else is the change in the law? Well, in the heavenly temple, when he goes in, he only goes in one time for all time. That is different than the temple here on earth. On earth, the priest has to continually go in time and time and time and time again. And there, he gives all these reasons. And so we see differences. There is a change in the priesthood in the heavenly temple, and there is a change in law in the way that the sacrifice is given. Now, that does not mean that there has been a change on earth. There's a change in the heavenly temple. There is no change on earth. And I think that this has been one of the more, I think that Hebrews is right up there with Galatians. I think it's one of the most misunderstood books by the mainstream Christian church. I've talked a lot. I'm going to pass this over to Rob. Rob, go for it.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm just scrolling through the Epistle of Hebrews, just, while you're just like reflecting on this great question. The word change there, metathesis, is the same word used for like Enoch's translation. It doesn't mean replace one thing with another. That's not what it means. It just means that in a different scenario, there's a different law that applies. That's why it says in the Epistle of Hebrews that if Yeshua is not a priest on earth, there's already priests out after the tribe of Levi, that it's not like Yeshua could have gone into the temple and put on the high priestly garb and gone that he would be violating
right
the Torah, right? It's, so the idea of Yeshua's priesthood has to be understood, like you pointed out. The Epistle of Hebrews painstakingly differentiates the priesthood of Yeshua. It says if he's from Judah, is it chapter 7? Yeshua's from the tribe of Judah. Why does that matter? Why? Because the law that the sons of Aaron of the Levitical line are the earthly priests endures. That law continues. That's why he doesn't say there are no more, the priesthood of the sons of Levi is no longer
right
and is now replaced with, no. He says, because there is a metathesis doesn't mean change, replace, that the Levites have been replaced by the Melchizedek priesthood. That's not what he's saying. He's saying in the heavenly realm, it's not the sons of Aaron that minister, that are the ministers of the heavenly, in the presence of God in the heavenly realm. That's all it's saying. It's saying in a different scenario. It's really a different example of what Paul makes the point of at the beginning of Romans 7. If a woman's married and she has a relation with another guy, she's an adulteress. But if her husband dies, now she can be married again and she's not an adulteress. Right? So there's a change in the law. Now, it doesn't mean one law has replaced another. It means the scenario
has changed. And in a different scenario, there's a law that applies to that scenario. So maybe that might be behind his question. And maybe we hopefully brought some clarity rather than mud to the discussion. So here's the issue that I see with, so let's take it out of that. Let's leave Hebrews 7 behind for now. And let's just go to the idea of the Torah changing. Even Christian commentators, even Christian theologians and scholars will tell you that the Torah is a reflection of God's holiness. Be holy, for I, the Lord your God, I, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, am holy. And then he gives us the Torah, right? So the Torah is a reflection of who God is, his justice, his mercy. All these things are reflected in the Torah. It is a reflection of his nature and who he is. Okay. With that said, God says in, Micah, I, the Lord your God, do not change. Therefore, Malachi, I'm sorry. Therefore, I knew it was an M. I knew it was an M book.
The other M.
The other M.
Come on, Caleb, it's Mem, not M.
No doubt. But therefore, Israel is not consumed. And so the point here is simply that I know people have said, oh, no, there's been laws that have changed. And a lot of people will point to the idea of, the tabernacle is no longer carried. Well, to me, this would be a change, not in the law, but in the situation. If Israel was wandering again, I've brought this up many times, if Israel was wandering again, all those laws are still there. And if Israel, I've also wondered, if Israel were to go out in battle like they used to, right? And let's just say that they had the Ark of the Covenant, would they follow those same laws? And I think that the answer might be yes. Now, will that ever happen?
Yeah.
Will that ever happen? Probably not. But the point is that those laws have not been done away with. Those laws still apply because they still stand because that is who God is.
The example you brought up earlier is a great example, is Daniel in exile. There is no priesthood operating. There is no temple. It's destroyed. And he's still praying towards Jerusalem at the time of the offerings, and a beautiful prayer, Daniel chapter 9. And guess what? Gabriel comes and confirms his prayer, confirms that his worship of God is acceptable. Guess what? Zechariah, how many hundred years later, is at the temple as a son of Aaron. We read this in Luke 1. At the time of his service at the temple, going in, offering the burnt, not the burnt offering, but at the altar of incense. And guess what? The same messenger of God that
shows up,
came to Daniel, comes to him. But guess what? There was no Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies in Herod's temple. So did that disqualify the worship of God that was in the rhythm of the Levitical system? Not at all. So these things clearly endure. They are not against God's will. And, the scriptures are full of wonderful, I like you said, Brent Emery, the scriptures are full of itself. He's got a funny sense of humor. And I think that obviously is a word play that is really clever. And I think hopefully people go, wow, yeah, it is. It's
yeah. Okay. So let's move. We're going to move to a different subject now. Great conversation on that. And Kelly says, thank you, Rob. The explanation regarding Hebrews 7 was the best I've ever heard. There you go. All right.
She's biased.
My boy is wicked smart. All right.
So maybe, well, what did I say? I said, change does not mean replace one thing with the other.
Right.
A change would, now it's not that word used, but like where God says, don't harm the boy to Abraham, and then provides the substitute. Right. That is an example of replacing one thing with another.
Okay, let's move. Now, I've butchered this person's name before. I'm going to do it again. It's Chiron, I think. Chiron. Anyway, he says this. I wanted to ask some questions about Passover since it's coming up. Thank you. I'm so happy that you did. There seems to be a lot of contention with calendars and dates in our movement. How did biblical Israel cite the new moon for a new month? Was it the slither, the conjunction, or something else?
Sliver, maybe he means.
I think that's what it means. I think that's what he was going for. I see people do it differently, therefore celebrating Passover on different days. Myself and my wife are content with following the Jewish calendar and celebrating as most do. Also, why does Israel today celebrate it 2 days? I've looked into it, but found myself more confused. Shalom. Okay, great question here. So let's take it a piece at a time. There seems to be a lot of confusion. How did biblical Israel cite the new moon for a new month? Okay, now I know this is going to sound odd, but it wasn't. People didn't just walk outside and go, "Aha, the new moon." That now we know. I know that it might be surprising to many, especially since we got all these teachers online saying that they're citing the new moon, right? No, that's not how it worked. There was an appointed official from the temple who was in charge of citing the new moon. And there were different reasons. In fact, the later rabbinical literature gives multiple reasons on why the moon sighting would actually be shifted. So they would move it a day or two, depending on if they needed extra time for something. And this is also how they would intercalate the year. And when it comes to intercalation of the year, this all had to do with, this was all in the same system. It's not like there was some guy at home going, oh, well, I think I'm going to intercalate the year this year I need more time, so I'm going to intercalate the year. No, that's not how it worked. It was official, and the temple ran on the official call of the moon. Of this person who would cite the moon. So they had somebody, and it was probably multiple people that would agree to cite the moon a certain way. They would shift it if they needed to by a couple of days. I know that sounds odd, but there's some evidence for this. And ultimately, the sighting of the moon was it helped the rhythm of what was going on. Now, we have another question later that we can talk about that has to do this. How did the biblical Israelites cite the new moon of the month? Was it I think it's sliver, the conjunction, or something else? So I'm not exactly sure all of the criteria of what this person, and maybe Rob can speak to this, what the person would actually look for or how exactly they would decide this. But this is one of ultimately I guess my whole point in bringing all this up in terms of why I'm going to lengths talking about this is because we have in the movement, in the Torah movement today, we have people who say, well, they didn't cite the new moon, or, hey, there's somebody in Israel who just cited the new moon. What they mean by this is there's someone on their Facebook feed who walked outside and said, now it's a new moon. This is not how it's ever worked. That's right, you can't. Right. It's not just Joe Schmo on the internet who's saying, "Hey, there's a new moon," and now we're all going to go by this. It's always been standardized, and it's always been standardized according to what the temple or the officials at the temple would say, even if people disagreed with the temple service itself. Right? I mean, you couldn't cite the new moon on your own and then go 3 days later than Passover and say, hey, here's a lamb, give it back to me after you dress it. Or, decide that you're going to celebrate Passover a day earlier than the temple, and go to the temple and say, here's my lamb, please give it back to me. They would have said, absolutely not. That's not how this works. You had to be on their calendar. So the whole idea that people are doing their own calendars is kind of ridiculous. And we do have some precedent for this in the first century, right? The Qumranis decided that they didn't like the calendar that the temple was on. And what did they have to do? They had to totally disassociate. They couldn't go to the temple. They had no ability to interact with the temple at that point. They had to be on their own. And so once again, I don't understand why people today think that it should be any different. Okay. And let's just finish out this comment, and then I'll pass it over to Rob. I see people celebrating Passover different days. I may say, I think that the best practice for us is to maintain the calendar that is standardized for all of Israel today, and the one that Israel is celebrating. That's what I think. Okay, Rob?
Yeah, again, back to good points. Again, back to Luke, Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. We have Yeshua being brought to the temple, right? So he's fulfilling the commandment of circumcision, and then his mother goes back after, according to the Levitical law, for a period of having, after having a son, waiting X amount of days, and then coming with an offering. That means they're very much on this, their whole life is calibrated according to what's going on in Jerusalem. But guess what? We also learned in Luke 2, they lived far away, and they came to Jerusalem every year for Passover. And then it tells the story of when he's 12 years old, that how he hangs out in the temple, listening and asking questions, and they're amazed at his wisdom by the questions he's asking, which means he's deeply engaged in what their discussions are, and he's advancing the conversation. It's not like they're talking about something and he's like, well, what do you guys think about the new moon sighting? Like, he's not like, no, it's like his wisdom is evident in the questions he's asking. How did they know if they lived up in Galilee? How did they know when Passover was? Okay, so there was a communication system, and it was understood. And another aspect, though, is we have to remember a lunar calendar was not just a brand new invention.
Right.
In Exodus 12, which is a passage of scripture that many will be reading and thinking about in the days to come, it says, this will be the first month for you. They already know what a month is. They already know that the Hittites had a lunar calendar. The Babylonians had a lunar calendar. So the idea of, people had been watching the stars, long before Moses, and knowing the cycles of the years. Abraham knew how old, how old Abraham was, how old Ishmael was. It was going to be a year before Isaac was born, how old Sarah was. How do we know? It's because they understood the cycles of time. They didn't have the light pollution we have. It was just boom, every night out, for nomads particularly, like you're out there and the stars are boom and the moon is bright light in the sky. And they knew this. They knew that God had built this calendar into creation with the sun and the moon and the stars, and they worked together with the seasons. And that was a complicated mathematic kind of dance of all these different moving parts. And that's what they were bringing into consideration. For example, how do we know if there was going to be a 13th month or not? It had to do with the springtime. Like, are the crops, is it still winter? Like, look around. Like, what's the land doing? There were considerations.
Have there been enough lambs? Have there been enough lambs? Have there been enough lambs born to be able to?
So there's all these considerations that God gave the Torah in kindness. Right? It's like Yeshua says he gave the Shabbat to man, not man to the Shabbat, right? And so that principle is true for everything, is that and you're right also to point out the sectarianism that you see today is just another example of what was going on in the first century, right? People arguing about how to read the Bible, who's really in, who's out, who's doing it right. All this kind of stuff, who you can eat with and who you can't eat with, which are the true Christians and which are the false Christians, that nothing new. And so the calendar is a good go-to for people who are looking to specialize in their version, of the way things should be. But yeah, there were numerous factors. And I think even there was a way that people knew, and I think they published in advance. I think they had enough of a system to where, and this is, of course, later in the rabbinic world that becomes a thing. But I think Jews in the diaspora who never visited the Holy Land, Jews living in Rome, Jews living in Greece,
they knew.
I think there was a way with their communication that they knew when they could plan ahead. And they would be, and so that touches on the other part of Chiron's question, is the 2-day span in some cases. I think at least sometimes the idea is that it's, okay, well, we know it's over this we're going to celebrate it for 2 days because of maybe some uncertainty. And that's okay. The point is that it's helping God's people organize their time according to the prioritization of his feasts, and to do it. And there's a whole collective unity. The temple was to be central for that. The Jerusalem temple, as God said, this is a place where I cause my name to dwell. It's Jerusalem. It's not Mount Gerizim, like the Samaritans say.
Yep.
Yeshua didn't affirm the Samaritans. The Samaritans needed to come to terms that, David was legitimate, Jerusalem's legitimate. Oh yeah, and the Messiah comes from David. So
let's go to the last question that Chiron, thank you, that is how you pronounce it, asked, and the on in the diaspora, so outside of Israel, why is there extra days added to all the festivals? And the answer to that is, we see this question come in all the time. Oh, well, how would you know when to start Shabbat if you were in Alaska and the sun never goes down? Or, oh, how, what did they do if they were in Australia back in before, the internet? There's all these questions that come up. Well, the Israel had a system for this, which was if you were in the diaspora, you celebrated for 2 days instead of one to make sure that you hit the right day. So that if there was any question, you were covered. You were celebrating when Israel was celebrating because you actually celebrated for 2 days instead of one to make sure that you hit the day. That's why there's an extra day added to all of the festivals. At least that's how I've understood it. And I'm sure people will tell me if I'm wrong. Okay. Kelly in the chat room, clarification to question. I heard that herbs may have been imported from much later as, wait, hang on. Rob, please review as others might be interested in hearing. In Exodus 12:8 and Numbers 9:11, can bitters be describing the bread, not herbs, to line up with Deuteronomy 16:3, bread of affliction? And then she goes on, clarification to question. I heard the herbs may have been imported from much later as all other references that are translated herbs use a different Hebrew word. I've never heard that.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm tracking, but the word, I think she's talking about where it says merorim, bitter things. And she's tying to that with where it says the bread of affliction. Mm. And I think her point is right. If I remember the question correctly, it is a tie with eating the bitterness of what you're eating. It's not the bread that's bitter, right? It's just it's unleavened bread. The merorim, or the maror, as it'll say on the Passover plate, is something that's added, and the bitterness is from bitter herbs, even though the word herbs is not used there. That's where they would have had bitterness to add, but that it is a picture of the affliction, right? And that word bitter is used. If you remember just the beautiful book of Ruth, where her name's Naomi, right? Which means pleasantness. And she says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, right? Call me bitter. And so it's from that same word. So when Naomi says, call me bitter, why does she say, call me bitter? She's using a flavor, a taste as a metaphor for her emotional grief. She's lost her husband. She's lost both her sons. She's been in Moab, right? And so, but yet her name is happy, right? Or nice and pleasant. And she's like, don't call me by that name because it doesn't fit what's going on here. So that bread of affliction that is represented, that is called specifically Deuteronomy 16. And that's in the Greek translation. The ancient Greek Jews had no problem using artos there.
Right.
They knew it's unleavened, but they still called it artos. So we should just reaffirm, we have to say this every year for those people out there that jump on this bandwagon, that because the Gospels say artos, it proves that it wasn't Passover. Those people need to stop teaching, and they need to sit down, close their mouth, and start listening. Sorry, that I told you there was. Rob goes off today. So artos is the bread of affliction. There's a lesson there we're supposed to bring into our discussion of the Exodus that has to do with really highlighting and contrasting slavery and freedom. We're not made for slavery in this earth, right? We're not, God's people are not, we're made in God's image. But because of the Pharaoh type of world systems that oppresses what it tries to force people to be animals rather than humans made in God's image. And there's a deep bitterness there. You know, we were talking in our shameless plug, Caleb, in our promise, plagues, and Passover class, which is free. There's still one more week, so go to our website and log in for free if we want to join. But we looked at Exodus 6 and went through that passage where it says, God tells Moses, he says, go tell the children of Israel that I'm here. I am the Lord. I'm going to bring you out from here. I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to redeem you. I'm going to bring you to myself. I'm going to take you to the land of promise, like all these awesome things. And then it says Moses went and did this. And it says, Velo shamu, they didn't hear him because of their short spirit and the heavy burden of the slavery. In other words, it's not that they was like he was talking a different language. It's just like they couldn't receive his words, even though he had the greatest news in the world.
Right.
God's here. He's faithful to his covenant. Remember his promise to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He's good. Promised land. We're going. This is the time is now. Like it's all good news. And you don't have to do anything but just watch the salvation of the Lord, right? It's all good news, but it says they couldn't hear him because of the harsh slavery. And I think that a crucial lesson among the others in the Passover season is to remember that we were rescued, right? This is crucial for understanding our redemption in Yeshua ultimately, is that we were dead, you know, we can't, in the same way that in Exodus 6, where it says they couldn't hear Moses. It doesn't mean that they're like, talk louder or right. I need a hearing aid. That's not what it means. It means they couldn't receive it and believe it because of the condition, and thus all the more for God's kindness to demonstrate not only his power, his long suffering, his covenant faithfulness, but also to condemn one by one the gods of Egypt, right? And their quote gods, right? All the powers of Egypt could do nothing. Anyway,
yeah.
Hope that helped.
Okay, let's move on. I appreciate that. By the way, if you have questions about Passover, next week we will be 2 days before Passover, right? So send in your Passover questions. Like we should have said that at the beginning, so anybody who turned us off after the first few minutes could send in there. But ultimately, send in your Passover questions now, and we would be happy to answer them next week. And then we will have a show during Passover.
If you need someone to come supervise your matzah, homemade matzah.
Yeah. Oh, hey. Speaking of which,
for the right price, I'll fly anywhere.
I've thought about recording this. So people keep asking me, "Am I going to start?" So let's slow down. I make sourdough bread, and I make sourdough bread at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. I enjoy it thoroughly. Let me tell you, I have my own signature loaf that I make every single week, which is called Papas Papitas, because I make it with the papitas. So
the little pumpkin seeds?
Yeah.
Nice.
So I put pumpkin seeds in it, but then I also put pumpkin seeds on the outside so that it roasts the pumpkin seeds while it's baking. Anyway, so that's my signature loaf. Okay. So I've had a lot of people say, "What are you going to do with your sourdough starter?" Who, by the way, is named Marshawn. So my sourdough starter, Marshawn, who's going to go full yeast mode.
That's
anyway.
an old school Seahawks
reference, yes. And actually, so I'm going to throw Marshawn away. And I had one person say, "Hey, sell it to me and I'll sell it back to you after Passover." No, I'm going to throw Marshawn away. I'm going to start afresh. And for anyone who is a jiu-jitsu practitioner, my new sourdough starter is going to be called Leandro Dough. Nobody gets that. Anyway. Okay. So
is your kitchen called the dojo?
Oh, nice. I like that. Anyway, so I've thought about recording all this, but one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to throw Marshawn away, and then I'm going to make bread without a sourdough starter and without without leaving time to rise. And so I'm going to try to make my normal sourdough, but without a starter and without rising time. And I'm very interested to see what it's going to look like. Anyway, okay. So all of that
put, pumpkin seeds in your matzah.
Why not? Come on.
You could do at least one batch. You could try
Let's freaking go. Let's do it. Okay. Let's move on. We got a couple more questions that we could hit here, but we're going to hit at least one. This one, and I don't know if I have a good answer for this. In fact, I don't think I do, but I think it's worth talking about just because you might have a good answer for it. Grant writes and he says this. I have a friend. I
usually have really good answers.
That's right. Yeah, your answers are always impressive. Okay. Grant writes and he says, I have a friend who is Eastern Orthodox, and I asked him about their date for Pascha and how they settled on it. I'm aware of the Quattrodeciman controversy and the decision at Nicaea, and he told me that the Jews began keeping a new calendar in the 3rd century that was fixed. He's talking about the Hillel 2 calendar, I assume, and not an observational one like they had before. Because of this, the possibility arose for 2 Passovers to be observed in a 1-year cycle, or even no Passover observed at all in a 1-year cycle. I don't know what your friend is talking about. I have never heard that. I've done a lot of work in the Quattrodecimans. I've done a lot of work on the calendars. I've done a lot of work on Passover dating, like a lot of work on Passover
I don't know it detailed either, but it's plausible. I mean, what he's describing is like exactly what happens generally. Like the idea of different groups saying, we've got, back to Chiron's question, right? Of like,
right.
Well, different people. I mean, aren't there different days of Christmas even between
right.
like?
But so I completely agree with you. The possibility of people observing different Passovers is certainly there, especially once. But this is one of the reasons that Israel standardizes the calendar. The Hillel 2 calendar is standardized specifically because of this. This is why it's a little confusing to me. I've never heard that the church decided to set the date of Easter after the spring equinox, so that because there was dissensions in the ranks in the Jewish calendar. That to me I've never heard that. To me, it's much more an idea of they wanted to celebrate on the day that Yeshua rose, and we see this in the literature, right? They discuss whether or not they want to celebrate when the Jews are celebrating on the night of the 14th of Nisan, when Yeshua had his Last Supper, or whether or not they want to celebrate when Yeshua rises. And they decide that they need to celebrate on a Sunday. I don't think it had anything to do with the Jewish calendar. Now,
they wanted to also have it after the solstice, which was a big thing for marking whether it's what they call a pregnant a year that is calibrated, had to do with the solstice. So
I've also heard, and I haven't been able to corroborate this. I probably said that wrong, but anyway, I haven't been able to find evidence of this, but I have been told by some, and I think this might fall into the all Christians hated Jews back then kind of scenario, but I've been told that they never wanted to celebrate on the exact same time as the Jews, which is why if you have, like this year, where you have the Nisan 15 hitting a Sunday, they push it out a week. Now, once again, I don't know if that's true or not, but I have heard
we see that sentiment even in the 2nd century Didache, where it says, well, they fast twice a week on these 2 days, so don't fast on the same days there, fast on these other days. And it's already this idea of you have to do it different, that's what the Didache is not scripture. It's not even good advice in many places. So yeah. Your point there is actually well taken. I'm certainly the Christians are saying we don't want to look anything like the Jews. The idea is they crucified Christ, and so we don't want to look anything like him. It's such a bad attitude.
It is.
Well, how come the apostles continued and disciples continued to pray in Jerusalem? Didn't they think, man, we're looking like all these other Jews coming here and worshiping at the temple?
Well, beyond that, I think that one of the things that's missed is one of the reasons that there was confusion on whether or not people were Christians or Jews is because the Christians were still keeping the festivals well into the 4th century. At least some of them were, right? This is why at the, I have it in my notes, whatever council it was, they say Christians can't keep the festivals anymore. It wasn't that they just hated Jews. I know this is going to be shocking for some of the Hebrew rooters who think that all Christians hated Jews back then. But actually it was, was there animosity towards the Jews? Yes, there was. I'm not saying there wasn't. That's not what I'm saying. But the animosity was they won't accept Christ. And so we have to look different than them. It wasn't, we hate the Jewish people as a people. It was, they need to accept Christ. And so there was this want to separate so that there was a distinction between those who accepted Christ and those who didn't accept Christ. Was that right? Absolutely not. Was the church wrong for that? Absolutely. Did it bring a lot of problems? Absolutely. And we see this in the church today still, right? So I'm not saying that, but I don't think it's as cut and dry. Like everyone was this raging Nazi anti-Semite who wanted to exterminate the Jews. That's not how it was in the Christian church.
It's like the days of Judges where it says everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. It reminds me of a couple of years ago, we had a big Purim gathering. And one family came and they're like, well, not my whole family's not coming. Why? Well, because they're celebrating Passover tonight. And it was Purim. So it's like, and it's like, he's done a lot of research. It's like, okay.
So Rushki Bear in the chat room says, I've heard some are celebrating Passover on the 4th this week, which I thought was weird. Sorry if you've already talked about this. We haven't talked about this. I haven't heard that.
That might be what Chiron is getting at too.
One of the reasons I haven't heard that is because, hey, let me tell you folks something. Get off social media. It helps so much. You don't have to see all these people say that Yeshua died on a Wednesday or that he died on a Tuesday, and you don't have to see all the crazy people saying that they're celebrating on a different day. No offense to all the crazy people out there who are celebrating on a different day, but the point is that it takes away a lot of the noise around. Anyway, so I haven't seen any of that, because I am, I'm not on the social medias anymore, except for, of course, YouTube. But I don't even want, anyway, okay. I think this is going to do it for us. And the reason why is because we are going to be back next week. We're going to talk all about Passover again, right? And then we have a show in the middle of Passover. So we could really go Passover crazy here if we wanted to. Maybe I'll save some of my non-leavened bread and eat it during our one of our shows during the Passover show. That would be a lot of fun. Okay, let's go through this real quick in case you've forgotten. chegg@torahresource.com. That's how you can get a hold of us. That's our email address, 253-465-3205. That is our comment line. Torah Resource, by the way, you can find all sorts of resources for Passover. I'm going to be doing hopefully tomorrow, I'm going to be recording a video on how to conduct a Passover Seder. I'm going to do a traditional one, and I'm going to do a non-traditional one, so there'll be two videos. You can watch them and see which way you want to go. And so hopefully that'll be out by Friday, I think, maybe, if not the beginning of next week. And I'm going to try to put stuff up on the homepage for everybody to be able to, of Torah Resource, to be able to have the resources needed. Okay, and finally, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. All right. Whoa. We hope that this conversation has done at least one thing. That is to glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua the Messiah. Why? You know why. Because Messiah matters.